Hello and welcome to a review I just had to make after playing the new Silent Hill 2 remake. Before we begin, let me just say I made multiple playthroughs and waited for my impressions to settle so I can be realistic. Also, I refrained myself as much as I could from watching any other reviews so I'm not influenced in any way. Also, I have to say that Silent Hill 2 is my favorite and, in my opinion, the best piece of horror media ever created. Aside from its perfect and bold story and character depiction, its claim to the throne of horror games lies in its details. This is exactly why I wish to comment on this remake. I'm not going to go over the pros and the cons separately, but rather try to incorporate them as a coherent whole. Because honestly, many times in this game they feed off of each other. You'll see what I mean. Bear in mind that this video contains massive spoilers and don't forget to like and subscribe. Okay, so let's start with the locations and ambience of the game. One thing I have to say is that the Bloober team outdid themselves. The game looks gorgeous. Every location you step in feels as if someone really put time and effort into making it look as best as it can. It's high detail and vivid. You can really feel the world around you. Now, one would think that's a good thing, right? Well, yes and no. This is what I mean when I say the pros and cons feed off of each other. This remake made me want to spend time in the locations. It made me want to explore the rooms and it made me feel hyped about being in town of Silent Hill, prison and labyrinth included. Again, you might ask, why would that be bad? Isn't that the purpose of a video game? Yes, but it completely nullifies the whole point of Silent Hill 2, which is that you shouldn't want to spend a second longer than needed in any location. The original game was ugly, raw and visceral. Just take the descent along with the prison for an example. This whole part looked like vomit in the original. It was repugnant. When I think of it, it reminds me of having a nightmare while running a high fever on a stomach flu, literally, that's my association with the original prison era. Well, these new visuals make me want to be there and explore. Too many times have I found myself not being scared at all and enjoying the environment. Silent Hill is a place you shouldn't want to be in, period, and the original game conveyed that quite successfully. I understand that a part of the whole vibe of the original game was hardware and software limitations. I understand that if they had the capabilities they do now, the game probably wouldn't be what it was. I understand that certain textures wouldn't be a garbled vomit mess, but rather more realistic. But that's just the thing. Realism is what takes away a lot of that dreadful nightmarish feeling. This is a huge problem for most of the new games, not just Silent Hill. And in the end, I don't care about the capabilities of the given era. I'm just comparing two finished products and the vibe they gave us. It's all about the end result anyway. The original game left a lot to your imagination, and that just amplified the feeling of unease. Also, it's very important to say that the original Silent Hill 2 was made on a custom engine and actually had super impressive graphics for the time. Graphics that even hold up today. And I'm not talking about that HD reissue, I'm talking about the way the original game looked and felt, gritty and dirty with film grain masking its shortcomings. Let's take a look at the other world now. Again, it looks stunning. The first time I stepped into Blue Creek Apartments, I was shocked by how good they conveyed it. The rust, the deterioration, the metal grates and fans, the whole hellish vibe. It's without a doubt perfect. What's the problem then? Well, it's perfect for Silent Hill 1 and 3. Too many times throughout the game it felt like so. There was a distinct difference between Silent Hill 1's and Silent Hill 2's Otherworld. Silent Hill 1 had this more warm color palette, with the Otherworld feeling like hell devoured the very space around you, while Silent Hill 2 felt more cold and deserted, which I believe thematically fits better. I mean, that's probably why it was different in the first place, but like I said, it's unquestionable they conveyed the great-looking Otherworld, just not for this installment. There are certain parts that feel like Silent Hill 2 Otherworld but are overshadowed by the ones that don't, which is honestly disappointing. I also want to dedicate a few sentences to Prison and Labyrinth specifically. I've heard people saying how these locations are the biggest upgrade in the game. Well, this is quite interesting, and these two locations perfectly sum up what I'm trying to say all this time. I do not believe the Prison and Labyrinth were upgraded or enhanced in any way. They're just different and longer. I think they are even a downgrade from what the original game was pushing. In the original, after the Brookhaven Hospital, the game was just getting heavier and felt more like a nightmare. The Prison and Labyrinth really felt like you were sinking deeper into dread. In the remake, not so much. Labyrinth was supposed to be the darkest corner of your mind. Instead, it's an action-packed spectacle, especially the Ruined Era. It's just a bunch of shootout rooms until Pyramid Head arrives. Fear is the one thing I did not feel in the remade Labyrinth, and it should be the first thing one feels. Same goes for the prison. There are just too many enemies and too much action. Early on, I just became indifferent instead of terrified. There are so many mannequins falling on your head that you just become desensitized. It just isn't Silent Hill 2 for me. Also, the moment you exit Brookhaven Hospital and end up in the dark streets felt really unnerving in the original game. You sort of felt that point of no return. You felt that your personal hell is here to stay, but in the remake it just feels like a zombie apocalypse. The part when everything goes silent excluded, that's great. Another thing that diminishes the feeling of unease is the fact that the hallways and rooms are so wide. In the original game, the location's design was much more narrow, creating a certain claustrophobic feeling which definitely added a lot to the overall fear factor. In the remake, you constantly feel like you have room to maneuver, which subsequently gives you the feeling that you can outrun or escape situations. Also, I think the new sound design helps with the diminishing the dread. I feel it's crafted to keep the player hyped at all times instead of to keep the player afraid. The original had those complete deafening silence moments where you hear nothing but your footsteps, and then you were unnerved by every minor thing in-game and outside the game as well during the playthrough. While in the remake, you can always hear some sort of hum or buzz or clanking in the distance, so you get accustomed to the sound and very few things can actually startle you. And now for the part I believe did the best job of conveying the spirit of the original game, and that's the Lakeview Hotel. This was a location where I almost felt like I'm playing the original game. Everything from the hotel model to the sound design and the way it was lit really transported me back. Same goes for the Otherworld Hotel. It's insane how good it looks without taking away the feeling of the original game. If I had to nitpick, I'd say I wish they kept the cold light instead of this afternoon vibe, but whatever. There is one thing, however, that severely broke the immersion of the hotel for me, and that's the employee sneaky section. In the original game, this was a final nail in the coffin. After everything the game threw at you, you were supposed to leave all your equipment and go down naked and exposed. It was terrifying. Here, not so much. First of all, the Mandarin patrols make it very arcadey since you're focused on sneaking past them, and secondly, the hallways are again way too wide, you never feel cornered or concerned. In the original game, the hallways were tight and you would unpredictably bump into a mannequin. You had no feeling of control over the situation, while in the remake you are in full control. And now that we touched upon the mechanics, let's start with the biggest change they made, the over-the-shoulder camera. For me, this is immediately an eliminating factor for this game because it just does not work. By default, it gives James an image of fighting capability. I like that they tried to tame it with grunts and animations of him actually struggling and putting a lot of effort into melee combat, but still, it's a big no for me. It just takes away so much. You may say now that it worked in, for example, Resident Evil, but of course it did, because in Resident Evil you play a character who is combat proficient, so naturally an over-the-shoulder action cam is no problem. It's about the context, not whether it works mechanically. And now you may say, well, Dead Space makes you play a character that's not combat trained. Yes, but in Dead Space the whole point of the game is jump scares and dismembering monsters with a plasma cutter. In Silent Hill it's not. Over-the-shoulder cam in Silent Hill 2 Remake is a narrative and context problem. You actually start relying on combat mechanics, such as shooting the nurse's legs so you could take her down easier, dodging patternized attacks, moving from lying figures poison AoE, and so on. All this is not bad in itself, it's just bad for Silent Hill 2. Combine all this with the new James's personality and the whole point of who James is, or rather how James is lost. But we'll talk more about his character and attitude later. Another thing that the third-person camera completely changed is one of the most important aspects of Silent Hill, and that is the fact that it never relied on jump scares. Silent Hill immersed you in a constant feeling of dread without any release of tension until you finish the game. It needed no cheap tricks. That's somewhat gone in the remake. Here we have Dead Space just in different location. And don't get me wrong, I love Dead Space, but Silent Hill 2 is not Dead Space, nor should it be. It's a completely different premise and approach. Like I said, the moment you start thinking about which limb you will shoot or how you will tactically dodge an attack is the moment Silent Hill 2 stops being what it is. It's the moment James stops being what it is. It just does not work. But allow me to say what I believe would work. And that's if this remake wasn't Silent Hill 2, but Silent Hill 1 or 3. Like I said, it's context. I mean, it would still be super inferior to the fixed camera angles, which are one of the best things ever. But if you had to go with over-the-shoulder cam, I believe Silent Hill 1 narratively gives you that option. It's a story about a father who is trying to retrieve his daughter. Harry Mason is not dead inside like James, he's not guilt-ridden and he isn't contemplating taking his life. Sure, he's an ordinary man, but he's a father hell-bent on finding his daughter at any cost. This alone justifies an over-the-shoulder camera and puts the protagonist in a much more aggressive and action-ridden state. The same thing goes for the third game. Due to the events that have unfolded, Heather was taught to be careful from an early age. She doesn't trust people easily and is not afraid to, quote-unquote, take care of herself. Plus, the whole game is pushing a heavy guns blazing vibe from the beginning, and also, it's fantasy. The first and the third game are pure fantasy. Sure, they have their symbolism, but they're about a cult who is trying to revive their god. The whole context of the first and the third game paves a more logical way for the remake to look like this. On the other hand, the forefront of Silent Hill 2 are psychological issues caused by insane life hardship and questionable decisions. The fantasy part is just a vessel for the story to play out. That's the biggest difference between Silent Hill 2 and other installments. But like I said, even if an over-the-shoulder camera would work contextually for the first and the third installment, it would still be a huge downgrade from the fixed camera angles. The magic that happens in a fixed camera angle is the player's loss of control in a situation. Half the time, taking a step forward is taking a leap of faith. You don't know what awaits you and you don't know how it will play out. And that's what instigates that soul-shattering feeling of everlasting dread I was mentioning. In the original, the game is in control, while in the remake, you're in control, which is a huge downgrade from the main premise. Another thing that bothered me, which I believe is a pacing issue actually, is the fact that the game got even less scary and more predictable as it went along. It starts feeling very linear and arcadey very soon. The original game somehow managed to up the stakes at every new location, making itself more and more unnerving and frightening, while the remake does the opposite. Spending time in certain locations becomes tiring after a while and therefore less exciting and scary. It starts feeling like a chore instead of survival. The original game knew when to cut and throw you into a new situation. Just as you got accustomed to a certain location, it was done, and you were thrown into a new one. This constant blindsiding didn't let you take a breather or get too familiar with things, resulting in extra stress. The remake, however, does the opposite. It overstays its welcome to the point in which you don't care anymore. For example, the Otherworld always served the purpose of upping the stakes. Just as you thought you were finished with a location, you would end up in an even worse version of the same one. But in the remake, by the time I got into the Otherworld in a location, I was already spent, so it had no impact on me. Brookhaven Hospital is a perfect example of this. In addition to what I just said, the thing I really dislike is the super checkpointy feeling of the Otherworld. It feels like you do all these things in 3 parts and then they progressively get cut off and you can cross them off the list. It's the same with the 3 clock-handled doors in Blue Creek Apartments, the 3 chains in the hospital, the animal doors in the prison, the 3 eras in Labyrinth. It starts to feel familiar and very chore-like instead of investigative and suspenseful. The Labyrinth especially doesn't work this way because I really did not feel like I was in a labyrinth. The huge main room with the cube always gave me a feeling of safe house and a place to collect my thoughts, and something like that should not exist. Also, the monster outrun part with Maria in town is critical. I guess they thought it would create tension, but all it does is remove it. It's a pointless action-packed gimmick that takes away from the experience. Also, I need to touch upon the holy trinity of stupidity in this remake, and those are glass breaking, wall smashing, and obstacle training. These things are just so pointless and annoying, and again de-immerse the player from the original experience. Not to mention Maria commenting on every glass you break, further de-immersing you from the game's atmosphere. Look, I understand that this was probably meant to be a mechanic for you to decide whether you will break a cabinet for supplies or not because the monsters are drawn to sound, but I never really felt that it mattered. I don't recall the situation where I had to make that choice because it would have consequences, and that brings me to the difficulty issue. Maybe in hard mode it does make a difference, but I tried playing on hard mode, and then you really have to pay attention to combat tactics, which even further de-immersed me from Silent Hill 2 experience. The more I'm forced to learn the fight patterns, the less I feel like I'm playing Silent Hill. I mean, sure, you can do hard combat mode by trying to sneak past most of the enemies, but do you really have to play hard combat mode in order for the game to make sense? I always liked my Silent Hill games on difficult puzzles and normal or even easy combat. I always felt that it was kind of the winning formula for the playthrough because it balances one against the other. The remake on hard mode just becomes an action game and nothing else. Especially the tiring rooms with waking enemies. You pick up a key item and then the enemies arise, turning the game into a zombie apocalypse. It all feels too flashy. One of the scariest things in the original was if the enemies did respawn, in certain parts you wouldn't know it. You would casually stroll the hallway because you thought you cleared it and would abruptly bump into an enemy, which was terrifying. In the remake, it's always a spectacle. The lights start flashing, there are sound cues, or something else out of the ordinary starts happening, which immediately puts you in an action-ridden state. Now, regarding the wall smashing, I really don't know what that is about. My only guess would be load time for an area, maybe. I don't know, please enlighten me in the comments, but all it did for me was remind me of Silent Hill Homecoming, and I really disliked it. And in the end, we have the obstacle course. First and foremost, it also gives the game a very much not needed action vibe. Another thing it does, it also makes the game feel arcadey, with the special cloth marking the spots and the same looking containers to reach windows everywhere. Why? How does that improve the gameplay of a game like Silent Hill 2? Then you find yourself standing in front of a 10-inch pavement increase and you have to loop around it. Look, I have no problem that you cannot climb surfaces no matter how small, but then let that be the staple in a game that has very defined rules, because again, this wouldn't be such a problem if it was some other game, but the original Silent Hill 2 was so well thought out. Even if it wasn't, the end result felt like it was. Now, I'm not gonna even go into the reactive button smashing. I don't know which is worse, when you fight the monsters or when you reach for something. This is not God of War. It brings absolutely nothing to the game except downgrading the seriousness and further removing fear. Also, the interaction indicators take away so much. And yeah, I know you can turn them off in the options, but it's all about the default experience. Searching for things in the original game was a part of the fear factor, especially if you missed things and had to backtrack. Let's move on to the characters now and start with our protagonist, James. I believe the actor did a good job with what he was given. He definitely nailed the micro expressions and line delivery straight up, but what he was given is wrong. This is not a movie, it's a video game which shows us that whisper acting doesn't always translate well from one medium to another. Also, this new James is not James, he's too much of a hero. He's way too calm, way too pleasant, handsome and imposing. Again, one might ask why that is bad. Well, this is why. The original James was bland, lame and weird. He was no hero. You didn't root for him or trust him. You questioned his motives. And that's exactly what I mean when I say the original game made very bold choices. Making the protagonist unlikable is a bold choice that worked perfectly for this game. It also magnified the fear and stress of the original game because you just didn't trust the person you were playing with. The original James just felt dead inside in his moments of calm, while the new James feels composed and brave. And again, this is what I mean when I said the pros and the cons feed off of each other. The new James is well made and it feels good to play the game as him, but at the same time that negates the whole point of the original James. It shouldn't be a pleasure, it should just be unnerving and insane. The original James had these mood shifts from being completely dead inside until some progress sparked his curiosity or joy, where he would actually change voice and behavior. It felt almost childlike, and that also made him kind of unpredictable. He also didn't have much of a way with kids, which was shown in his frequent anger outbursts with Laura, and he felt much more selfish from the get-go. The new James is just whisper acting all the way. One of the pivotal moments in this game is the end of the Otherworld Hospital when Pyramid Head impales Maria, and it turned out so uneventful in the remake. I did not feel it at all. Same goes for when you find Maria dead in the labyrinth, along with her final impalement by two Pyramid Heads. These crucial moments of Maria's multiple deaths are completely dull and non-emotional. They're really weak. Just compare these things. I believe the word in which I would sum up the new James would be cool. which is wrong. The cutscene before you fight Eddie shows best what I'm talking about.
But you ain't laughing now, are you?
It's also worth mentioning that all the cutscenes are super inferior to the original ones, which brings us to Mary/Maria. Let's start with something positive. I think the actress is very good in the role of Mary. She has that girl next door you end up marrying vibe going on, and I actually bought it. Does it translate well to Maria? Not at all. First and foremost, the character model and the facial expressions are nowhere near as insidious and even malicious as they were in the original. This is something I'll repeat again because it's what made the original game so unsettling. All the characters had this weird evil look about them, which combined with David Lynch type weirdness made the cutscenes and interactions very unsettling and weird. The original game did not let you breathe even during the breaks, and New Maria is the perfect example of how that's gone in the remake. When you first meet Maria in the original game, she immediately gives you the feeling of intent, and you get very confused. When she starts poking and hitting where it hurts, you can feel her meaning, just like with Pyramid Head. As soon as you see him, you feel his purpose. Same goes with Maria in the original. Just to make it clear for those who don't know, Maria is the same thing as Pyramid Head, a demon conjured by James's subconscious. And while Pyramid Head serves the role of a prosecutor, Maria serves the role of James' suppressed sexual desires wrapped in the form of his wife who he longs for. This is way of an oversimplification of their meaning, but this is a review, so go watch the recap for in-depth explanation. Anyway, that's exactly why there needs to be a larger contrast in her behavior. That's why in the original she can vary all the way from a seduction poison injection to being sweet or getting needy. Like I said, I feel the new Maria is missing that intent. I'm sure they went for it in the remake as well, but it's all too flat. Maria just feels like a lost girl who is bored out of her mind while ditching school, and now she's looking for something to do until she can return home and claim she attended all the classes. I'd say the problem lies 50-50 in line delivery and in the character model, which again is a direction problem. Now let's move on to my favorite character in the game, Angela, who apparently jumped ship from Scooby-Doo to star in this remake. That's the first thing you'll notice. Again, gone is the worn-out, tired-of-life character model and is replaced with Wilma.
Besides, I'd just slow you down.
What about that?
The original Angela looks so scary and insane, one might even say sinister. Like I said, even the characters who are victims themselves are giving you the creeps in the original. Now compare it to the remake. When I say this, I mean no offense to the actress. In my opinion, she's done a good job with the direction she was given, but again, it's just that the direction is wrong. I felt absolutely nothing for her. No cutscene did anything for me, especially the last one in the hotel, which is one of my favorite cutscenes ever made. There is no dynamic to the conversation, everything is just flatlined. Also, notice how in the original, after the abstract daddy fight, Angela completely turns character when accusing you.
Relax.
Don't order me around!
I'm not trying to order you.
So what do you want then? Oh, I see. You're trying to be nice to me, right? I know what you're up to. It's always the same. You're only after one thing.
No, that's not true at all.
You don't have to lie. Go ahead and say it. Or you could just force me. Beat me up like you always did. You only care about yourself anyway. You disgusting pig.
Angela.
Don't touch me! You make me sick. You said your wife Mary was dead, right?
Yes. She was ill.
Liar! I know about you. You didn't want her around anymore. You probably found someone else.
She feels almost snake-like. She allows her resentment to completely change her. Now compare that to the remake.
I see what you're doing. It's always the same with you. You're only after one thing.
Angela, please.
You don't have to lie. Go ahead. Say it. Or you could just force me. Like he always did. You disgusting pig. I hate you. I hate you.
Angela, I don't know who you think I am, but I don't want to hurt you. I just want to get my Mary back.
You're Mary. Your own little Mary. At least she was. For a while.
What?
Admit it. You didn't want her around anymore.
It's dull and boring compared to the original, which has so much pain and juice in its line delivery. Which brings us to the next problem, which, aside from the character model, is one of the crucial mistakes with the new Angela, and that is the sound of her voice. It's way too deep and way too imposing. For me, it subconsciously gives a feeling of strength, which is in a direct conflict with how one would feel about the original Angela, who is a broken person at the end of her line. And the funny part is, the Jana Kill has a great voice, I honestly like it very much, it's just not for Angela. Now, aside from the fact that they've failed Angela, the cream on top is the unholy desecration of the Abstract Daddy boss fight. The idea of Abstract Daddy is genius and bold, not to mention it's one of the best monster designs ever. For those of you who don't know, Abstract Daddy represents one person forcing itself on another on a bed frame, all covered up in human skin. This is insane, and a direct visual line to Angela being sexually assaulted by her father. What was also very nice in the original game was the fact that the fight was taking place in a room, a tight place with not much space to maneuver. This made sense, because it gave the feeling of helplessness. Angela was just a kid when she was repeatedly assaulted. At that age, she was unable to fight her father off or escape. That's why a closed tight space makes so much sense. Not to mention the genius detail of thrusting pylons in the room, which constantly remind you of forced intercourse as you try to fight the boss. It's supreme. It feels claustrophobic and hopeless. Now, what does the remake do? It instantly gives you a way out in this macho physical confrontation with the boss who throws you through a wall into a hallway. You see, this fight was made to be flashy and for you to say cool, and this is exactly why it doesn't work. The original was supposed to give you a genuine home abuse feeling. This just gives an action man feeling. In the original game, the fight was awkward. Angela was present in the room. It was a tight space. It felt like you were privy to someone being molested and had to act about it. The original game quite nailed the mood, while the remake just does a typical Hollywood monster chase sequence that can be placed in any other horror game. The narrative is very focused on the act itself, and the way the original game presented it was perfect. Whether by accident or because of hardware limitations, I don't care, it just worked. I don't need Silent Hill to be flashy or cool. It's a deeply disturbing tale about the toughest hardships in human life people are unable to recover from. The original game wasn't sensational. It was horrifying, sad, and unsettling beyond measure. Also, the boss fights in general are too much arena-type combat. Aside from this Abstract Daddy nonsense, the best example is the first boss fight in the game with Pyramid Head. The genius thing about the original was that you just bumped into him in a random staircase. You didn't know what was going on, you didn't know if it was even a proper boss fight, the room was way too small and on top of that you couldn't kill him. It felt like a curveball thrown by the game. In the remake, everything leads to this grand confrontation which the game announces through subtle cues, and when you enter the room you have your obstacles laid out, you have a massive space to maneuver, the only thing missing is the audience cheering. It's a totally different feeling from the original. It's sensational and again removes the feeling of fear and dread. Mind you, this is not bad in itself, it's just bad for Silent Hill 2. Moving on to Eddie. I honestly don't know what to say here. I think he's definitely the highlight in terms of acting and line delivery, but again, something doesn't feel right. I believe he might be too much of a caricature compared to the original one. I believe I can explain it best like this. The new Eddie is a movie character. He feels like a Batman villain, while the original Eddie felt like that one neighbor you always feared as a kid. You know, that one guy that tends to sweat too much and speaks to himself in the elevator and you're not sure whether he has a corpse in his apartment? Yeah. Anyway, that was the scariest thing about the original Eddie. He felt way too real. Let's take a look at Laura now. Laura somehow feels like a grown-up playing a child. I actually don't have many objections to the way she was handled, but I somehow dislike the way she feels mature and aware. She feels 5 years older than in the original. It's true that a kid in her shoes would definitely be forced to grow up faster than most, but I must say I like the original representation better. Her infancy in the original game made all the situations involving her much scarier, unpredictable, and shocking. When I see her in the remake, I kind of feel like everything will be alright. I don't know how else to explain it. Also, again, a huge cutscene issue in the hotel after you watch the tape. This is it. This is the moment, and yet I felt nothing. Just like the cutscenes with Maria. Look, like I said, I believe the actors did their best with the direction that was given to them. I really feel they've treated the material with the respect it deserves, but I just think the direction was wrong. Nowhere have I felt that Lynchian vibe except maybe a minute in the Maria encounter in the labyrinth, but beyond that it's gone. The cutscenes are now a breather, while originally they too were tense and didn't offer relief. Because everything was weird, and the character models looked malicious in their design. You didn't trust anything or anyone, not even the protagonist. It was an utter nightmare, while here it just becomes dull after a while. Even the ones that serve an emotional release. So, to conclude things, I named the video A Love Letter Gone Wrong because I genuinely believe that the Bloober team put their heart and soul into this. I believe they really approached the material with respect and love it deserves. However, they failed. Whether by their own fault or Konami probably putting all these checkboxes the game had to tick to appeal to modern audiences, I'm not sure. The question now remains, is this a good game? All I did was bash it, but it must have done something right. Yes, it did. It did most of the things right, just not for Silent Hill 2. It's a very good game and I'd recommend it to everyone, but does it do justice to the original? No, I don't believe it does. If the original Silent Hill 2 didn't exist, I'd give this game a solid 7, maybe 8 out of 10, but the original does exist, which renders the remake void for me. Now, in the end you might ask why I'm so obsessed with all this. We'll always have the original to play and enjoy. But will we? Because you see, Silent Hill 2 is way too good and an important piece of media to be given the remake treatment. And the remake is the new clothing which replaces the old game whether we want to admit it or not. The new generations of players are not gonna go and play the original when they learn about the game. They're gonna play the remake, which they should, I don't blame them, but that's going to make the remake the staple for what Silent Hill 2 is. And while this game is good, it's still super inferior to the original in many ways. And most problematic thing is that it's not half as scary as the original. Like I said, I heard a lot of people saying how the game improved on certain things, but I disagree. This game did not improve on anything, it's just different. And the original game was not outdated, it's just different. It had a perfect reciprocity between the theme, mood, and hardware capabilities, while the new one feels too much like a typical Hollywood remake of a cult classic. At most times, it really lacks the flavor and the charm of the original. The original was really made into a playable nightmare, it felt like an experience. Just being in certain locations felt like a fever dream, while the remake tends to feel more like a shiny spectacle. If you never played Silent Hill 2, you definitely must experience the original. And not the HD collection or what it's called, but the original one, because there is nothing like it out there. And in the end, I think there is also one huge business factor why Silent Hill 2 Remake cannot capture the spirit of the original, and that is sales. Here's the thing, the original game came out in 2001. It was an era when 3D gaming was still on a huge rising trajectory with no diminishing returns. 3D gaming was still young. Gaming in general was still young. There weren't that many games being released on a daily basis and the players played what they were served. The only expectations were that the game be good. This was an extremely fertile soil for devs to experiment and try things out, which subsequently birthed Silent Hill 2, a game that was not appealing but rather repugnant. They actually captured one's worst nightmare in a video game, and that leads me to my point. I literally know people who are fascinated with Silent Hill 2, know everything about the game and hold it in high regard but have never played the original and don't intend to because they don't want to stain themselves with that experience. Hence, the remake was never supposed to be as gruesome as the original because it's 2025 and the market is very different from the one 20 years ago. Anyway, I'd like to hear your thoughts on this. Do you think I was too harsh on the game? Are there any fans out there who agree with this comparison? Let me know in the comments. Thank you for watching and see you in the next one.